Hi, everybody. My name is Gerald Lott. I am the Executive Director of Sauk Valley Voices of Recovery. I'd like to welcome everybody to Tuesday Talk, um, brought to you by Project Open. Tuesday Talk is an attempt by Project Open to keep the discussion in the Sauk Valley going about recovery, um, prevention, addiction, substance use disorder, etc. Uh, and over the last few months, we've brought topics that pertain to these issues. Sometimes we've talked about the politics, and sometimes we've given you an up close look at what this disease does to people and their lives. Today we have Jason Moss, friend of Sauk Valley Voices of Recovery, who lives in Will County and has lived experience with addiction. And he's going to kind of talk to us about where he's been and where he is now, and then and what he's doing to help this. Um, Jason is a recovering addict. Jason is also a board member of HERO, an organization that stands for Heroin Epidemic Relief Organization. Jason, welcome. How are you, man?
I'm good, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Good. No problem, man. So listen, you know, you came out here to RecoverCon and you told your story, and it was really impactful. And every time I've spoken to you, I've gotten something out of it. And I just wanted to let more people in our area kind of get to know you and know what's going on with you. So please, tell us about yourself.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me. Um, like you said, my name is Jason Moss. I am a recovering alcohol addict. My sobriety date is May 3rd of 2018. So by the grace of
All
God,
right, all
I'm
right.
coming up on 3.5 years. And that came with a little bit of work. I'll give a little backstory, not to go too in depth of the pain and misery that I endured, but just to give a little, you know, groundbreak or a little backstory of where I came from. Um, I was born in the '70s to a biracial family, mother and father, and as I'm sure a lot of us know, back then um, wasn't as accepted as it is today. And the reason I bring that up is that's kind of where I started, and a lot of my knowledge today is what I've learned in recovery. So knowing this today is kind of giving me ammunition, hopefully, to share this experience with others. Um, so the reason that was important that I learned, through my recovery is at a very early age, I never really felt like I fit in. I wasn't considered black. I wasn't considered white. So I really struggled with who I hung with, belonged to. You throw in there some poverty growing up on the east side of Cleveland. My father walked out on us at an early age. So there was a gamut of things that led to me searching for a way out. Um, I started using drugs and alcohol at 12, 13 years old. Started with weed, alcohol, and gradually progressed to harder things as I got into high school. Um, at 15, 16 years old, I moved out of Cleveland. My dad was back and forth in our lives. He was what you would consider a functioning alcoholic, managed a big company here in Chicago. So at 16, I left, moved out of my mom's house in Cleveland. In my eyes, I was running away from that life. And, from 13 to 16, I won't go into all the craziness, but I was already experiencing death, loss, violence. I had already been locked up in juvie home. So I figured if I go to a rich suburb, I won't be in the inner city, the drugs and alcohol. I won't have to deal with it. I can start over fresh. Um, and on the contrary, which I think a lot of people know, in the nicer neighborhoods, there's more expensive drugs. So 16, 17, I'm experiencing cocaine, LSD. Um, I had my first treatment at 19. I was charged with manufacturing and distribution on a college campus. Um, and this is where, we talk about consequences for our behavior. I always found a way to get out of trouble. I had parents. My dad knew a lot of people. So I was able, my dad knew a guy that played golf with the judge. So I was able to get, instead of 7 to 10 years in prison, I got my first day in treatment. It was a work release substance abuse jail, if you will, in Louisiana. So at 19, I'm in Louisiana for a year. My manipulation, my addiction, I latched on to the one, lack of better terms, shady counselor that allowed me to still smoke weed and pass drug tests. So I completed that, came back home, chaos continued. In my early 20s is when I started experiencing, I had broken an arm, I got an opiates, and I don't, there is issues with the pharmaceutical companies. My story's different. I struggle with addiction. So that pharmaceutical that was given to me rightfully by a doctor, I abused it. And I won't, like I said, I'll fast forward through a lot of this. But you could look at 20 years, my early 20s up until 40 of heavy opiate use. The last 3 or 4 years of my addiction was heroin and fentanyl. And I say this not to glorify my uses. My early 40s, I was taking 90 Norcos a day. And the reason that's important is to show that something greater than me wanted me alive, because I wasn't in any sense of imagination trying to keep myself alive. Taking 90 Norcos a day was not, people would have said you'd be dead, but I was fortunate. God had a different plan for me. 41, started facing some trouble at work. Not obviously, but I had been in legal trouble for the last 15 years of my life. Some form of possession, violations, probation violations, and never could take a dirty or a clean drug test. I never could take a clean drug test. Now, I passed drug tests by manipulating the system, fake pee, different manipulation tactics I would use. So a couple treatment centers in between there, and I'm just going to fast forward to my last, what we call hoorah. Me and my dad partied together. We never had the father-son relationship. We were boys, strip clubs, bars, trips. That was mine and my father's relationship. I'll never forget this day, May 2nd, 2018. I'm laying on my dad's floor. I made what we call a jab. It's about a gram of heroin and fentanyl, and shot it up, hoping I wouldn't wake up the next morning. I already sent my kids to live with their mom. I already left the girl that was taking care of my kids, and I'm sleeping on my dad's floor. And I ingested more than enough heroin that should have killed me. I woke up the next morning, and that level of desperation, I think my higher power, which I choose to call God, saw that as an opening. I looked at my phone. I had a missed call from Gateway West. It's on the west side of Chicago. They say, you get down here in an hour and a half, we got a bed for you. And, I tell people all the time, I didn't go into treatment like, oh, I want my kids back. I want my job back. I want my life back. I went into treatment to prove everybody wrong, that people like me can't recover. And I made a commitment to myself, probably one of the only commitments up until, that time that I actually kept. I told myself for 30 days, I'm going to do exactly what they say. If they tell me to stand on my head in the corner, I'm going to stand on my head in the corner. So I did that. I didn't sit in the back of the room. I didn't sneak out with the guys that went out and got high. I didn't sneak my cell phone in. All the little things that some people say, oh, well, that's not important. I did everything they asked me to do. I got a journal. I started journaling about all the craziness I had going around in my head. And man, this is how my God works. Sometimes he works with kind words. Sometimes he works with a 2x4. But he made sure my detox, I believe this, was the worst detox I've ever experienced in my life. It was the worst, and I won't go into, the graphics of it, but it was probably the worst 7 days of my life. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So I did. I did everything they said. I came up on 30 days clean. A good friend of mine, that came and spoke at Gateway. I just met him there, but now he's a good friend of mine. He said, so what you going to do? I said, I'm going home. I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to take care of my kids. I'm going to pay off my legal matters. And he said, Jay, you got 30 days clean. Now you're Superman, huh? Now, everything that people suggested to me in that treatment center was working. So I asked him, I said, what am I supposed to do? He said, follow me to Joliet. It's a south suburb of Chicago. I said, what's in Joliet? He said, a sober living home. I said, I'm 40 years old. I'm not going to have somebody tell me what time I could come in the house, what toilet I need. I needed every ounce of supervision. I needed every ounce of guidance that I could muster. It was the best experience of my life. A month and a half into sober living, they find my father. I get a call. See, I would always get these calls that, your dad is drunk here, high there. So I get this call and it's like, oh, do I need to go get him? They said, no, the police are here. I said, oh, great. Now he's arrested. They said, no, the coroner's here. So they find my father in his driveway, unfortunately passed away a couple days in his car. And if I wasn't in sober living around guys that I was able to be vulnerable and talk with, I would be probably back out there. I chose to stay. I chose to ask people how you get through this pain. So I stayed 3 months in sober living. I was ready to go home. I was asked to manage. So then I managed a sober living home for 6 months. I was away from my family for 9 months. Best experience of my life. Now my kids would come and visit. I would, being a manager, I had overnight passes and so on and so forth. But I needed to learn how to ask another man for help and accept his suggestions and put them into real world action. And I was able to do that without all that other chaos around. So I did. I stayed at Sober Living House. I work a 12-step program. My home group is Heroin Anonymous. We use the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. We feel that works. I am a board member of Hero, which has been an amazing opportunity. You see, I got involved with Hero 2 or 3 months into my recovery. And my sponsor said, you need to go to this event and volunteer your time. And I said, I got 2 months sober, 3 months sober. What can I have to offer? And it was an unbelievable experience. See, I had people come up whose family were still sick and suffering. And I was able to show them that there is a way, although I hadn't figured out all the avenues I needed to take. But as long as I was putting forth the effort, I was showing someone else that it is possible. So through the last 3 years, I've been privileged to go to the DEA, which was a scary experience. So someone coming from the way I used to live. Educate people that we're not all these violent, killing, heartless individuals, that a lot of us are sick people. We've been able to raise money, for sober living homes. We spoken at different outings and events. But yeah, I mean, so today I work a 12-step program. I'm active in recovery. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I sponsor guys, and we just try to carry the message. My ego and pride would love to tell people like I made this stuff up and I forged this road on my own. This program's been around 76 years. I'm just a steward, as you will, carrying a message that was so freely given to me. Yeah. So thanks, Gerald, for letting me be here. Hopefully I didn't talk too long.
No, not at all, not at all, brother. And just so people know, Jason is in a truck right now because he's at work. And I know you probably don't want to say what company, but do you own the company or?
Yeah, so I have a subcontracting company. Excuse me. I splice fiber optic cable for a large cable company here in Chicago.
Gotcha.
So we do fiber optics for internet, telephone, security systems, that kind of thing. And that's another blessing God's given me. Through this whole process of just, I should have been fired a long time ago. And I had a relationship with, and this just goes to show that a lot of us aren't these sick or like these terrible individuals. I was sick. A lot of my behavior was unacceptable. The general contractor pretty much told me, get your life together, come back, we'll keep work for you, get your life together, come back. And that's exactly what I did. I was gone for work for a year so I could get myself I had to learn how to live. I started using at a very young age. I was a very immature, unresponsible, and I was joking with my sponsee yesterday. I thought you paid your phone bill when you got that text saying, you can only receive text. You couldn't make calls out. That's what I thought is when you pay at 40 years old. That's how irresponsible I was. So learning, at sober living homes, we have a day where we sit down. We have a lady that comes in, or, now it's this gentleman, and they go over budgeting. We have, mandatory AA meetings, NA meetings, recovery meetings. These are all things that people like me, and that we're recognizing a lot of people like us need in their life. We don't just need to not do drugs. I tell people the easiest, it seems weird. The easiest part is to stop doing drugs. The hard part is living life on life's terms. And for a lot of us, maturing and learning how, I hate saying normal people function in life, but how normal life functions. The ups, the downs, losses, tragedy. And for a lot of us, promotions, accolades, those are tough for us too. So, I'm doing real good. I can go have one drink or one drug, So those are all things that sober living helped me address. A year later, I come back to work. My business is thriving. Everybody at my job knows about recovery. I don't know if you could see, this is the kind of, I don't know. It says, I'm here to be the voice for all the friends I've lost. So this is the kind, my job knows. I have a gentleman I work with that's out doing our job right now so I could be on here. It's just part of another blessing I have, that I have the ability to continue doing what keeps me sober and still provide for my family.
I think a huge part of the renaissance, say, of recovery is the getting away from the idea that I have to hide in the shadows because I'm in recovery. I lead with that. You people who have met me and only talked to me for 10 minutes know that I'm in recovery. I'm not ashamed of it. In fact, I'm very proud of it. And I've noticed that the people that I interact with that are willing to live out loud and recover out loud tend to have the stronger sobriety, in my opinion. They tend to be more service oriented. They tend to be more empathetic. They tend to reach further for people that need help. You said a couple things I just wanted to get you to jump in on. you talked about not feeling like you fit in when you were a kid and some other childhood trauma. And then eventually you got to a place where you wanted to die. Um, and I know those feelings all too well. And I just asked that maybe you could speak about them a little bit and how one leads to the next, leads to the final.
Yeah. So, I'm very open about my story, and that I believe is how I was able to work this recovery. You know, a lot of my childhood trauma that I carried was why I was using, and I didn't really. It seems kind of common sense, but I didn't correlate the two. You know, I thought I had put stuff in this deep little hole inside my soul that it wasn't affecting me anymore. Um, you know, I was raised by my mother and two sisters, so I had all this love in the house. I grew up on the east side of Cleveland, so when I went outside, I had to act a totally different way. You had to survive. Now, I'm not saying everybody in the neighborhood did that, but that's the kind of crowd I was attracted to. So I learned how to shut down this loving, caring person so I could go be a little evil outside. Um, another thing that I really didn't touch on is I struggled for male influence in my life. And I didn't bring this up because I was giving the clip notes of my story, but in Cleveland, we had this thing called Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So
Mhm.
my mom always saw that, you know, maybe all this anger out and causing all this chaos was maybe I needed a male figure in my life. So I
Mhm.
had this big brother, amazing guy, you know, and at 7, 8, he I had maybe 2, 3 years. He worked for the Chicago Orchestra, like in the offices. So I would get out of East Side of Cleveland and be in this big ballroom and be able to go on stage and get away from the chaos. He took a job, I think, in Boston, and he had to move. In my young mind, another male is walking out on me like my dad did. So then,
Mhm.
you know, a year passed, things were getting chaotic. I got another one. He gets married, his wife takes a job, and these are things I learned in recovery. Uh, his wife takes a job, he moves. So there is another guy that I told my secrets to, that I was having good healthy relationships with. I depended on, and my young mind walked out on me again. Every male figure I started trusting and relying on for protection was leaving me. What was I
Right.
doing wrong? You know, at a young mind, that's what I was thinking. I still speak to one of those big brothers today, and
Hmm.
it's more of, yeah, now it's logical. It was nothing me. It was life. He was moving on. He got promotion. You know, so
This was in
that
Cleveland, right?
correct.
So you
So
couldn't put together that they were leaving because of the Cleveland Browns?
hey,
Ah, you see that,
I'm still a Browns fan. Let's go Baker. Um,
huh?
but yeah. So you know that coupled with um, you know, back then my anger outbursts, there was a lot of Ritalin and, you know, all this anxiety, like they were dumping medication. I was labeled this bad kid. So now I'm sitting we had these school buses next to the school, like classrooms on wheels. So now I'm alienated from the regular school because rightfully so, I couldn't sit still in class. I wasn't taking the medication because I felt like a zombie. So I trick them and like put it under my tongue and then spit it out. So I couldn't sit still in class. Um, we were low income, and the reason I touch on this is I didn't realize how strong this had. You know, I suffer. We were low income, so we got scholarship to a Catholic school. Um, seventh grade, my principal offered us porn and alcohol and let us leave school. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Come to find out, it was all grooming us for abuse. So I was, you know, at seventh grade, sexually abused by the priest. Or he was we have what they call lay principal, so he wasn't the priest, you know. Um, my mom was friends with his wife. So the story came out that he was abusing people. I'm this hard kid from East Cleveland. Ain't nobody going to take advantage of me. The kid that was complaining about it, it push comes to shove. My mom asked me, I denied it because that kind of stuff doesn't happen to strong people like me. She gets with other mothers and they put together a legal fund for this man. So now I got to live with this lie that it didn't happen to me. I didn't realize how much power that had. And up until this time in treatment, when a gentleman, actually was my counselor, told me his story and how he was constantly running from that ugliness he felt, did I begin to correlate the two? Is that part of this ugliness I'm feeling? He put me in contact with a counselor. I began to talk about it and work on some of that trauma. And I came honest with my mom. She feels devastated that she put us through that situation. Me and her definitely came to terms with, the situation, obviously the past. And my mom's been sober 28 years. So she got sober quite a few years back. But all those things, and then that feeling, and I hate to give drugs credit, but drugs give you an amazing feeling. The problem we don't talk about is on the other side of that, all the devastation they cause. So
let's get into that though. Let's get into that because here you just listed a bunch of childhood trauma that you can identify. And maybe there's people out there that don't understand why. Okay, so that happened, and that happened to me, or that happened to somebody I know, and they didn't turn to drugs. So what was it that the drugs or the alcohol did for you with regard to that childhood trauma?
So for me, it literally was like a on-off switch. When I would take a substance, it would shut those nasty, ugly feelings that I had about myself. It would shut it off. And it was almost like a blank slate. So then I could pretend or live out what I wanted my life to be. So, right. Alcohol. Me and my dad at 18, 19 would be in strip clubs. I could turn off this inferior kid that I felt like I was. Even though I'm 18, 19, 20 years old, I still felt like this unworthy, inferior kid. But when I get alcohol in me, now I can talk this game. I could socialize and, flirt or whatever you want to call it with these females. Like I felt like a totally different person. As I sober up, I look at the chaos, the DUIs, the running from police, like all these consequences for my behavior start adding up. And now I start feeling worse about myself. So now I go back, and it's crazy, a depressant. We get depressed, we drink a depressant. Like the logic doesn't seem to,
Well, for me, that those childhood traumas tend to hang with me, and I liken it to if you had like a bee's nest right behind your ear, kind of buzzing, and I'm just hearing this, these issues all the time, just and so here I am trying to have a conversation with my boss at work, and in the background I'm thinking, those guys that laughed at me when I was 8, or the time that I couldn't hit the baseball, or the time that the guy sexually abused me, and all this kind of stuff that just hovers there, and it just maybe it's taken away 40% of your mind, because it's just a little bit of you's there. But then I would do drugs, and that buzzing would go down. It would go silent. I could concentrate on whatever I was concentrating on. But I always want people to realize this isn't the same as the people that say go to a bachelor party and have some drinks and they dance and they it's fun. That's not me. I'm not drinking and drugging for fun and games. I'm drinking and drugging to put that silence behind my ear, and it's a much more dark experience than
And you hit it on the head. You know, when we work with guys, and the way my sponsor explained it to me is the difference between, I would say occasional or recreational user. You know, it doesn't matter what the substance is; it's the reasons why. And you were just talking about the reasons why we drink or drug. You know, if I'm going out to celebrate a bachelor party and I have a good time and I go back to my life, that's different than what I was doing to, like you said, kill something inside, shut that silence that buzzing, um, or those scary thoughts I would have. See, those substances did that for me, you know,
hmm
um, and then you throw on top of it, I by no means have MD behind my name, but the little education I do have when it comes to substance abuse, heroin and fentanyl, it changes the chemical makeup of my brain. So now my brain's been rewired to think that I need those substances. So it goes from a let me kill this pain to my body telling me I need these, to my brain stop producing these chemicals because I'm taking an artificial chemical that's putting it into my brain. And, there's probably not probably, I know there's smarter people than me out there that could pretty much educate us on what those chemicals are that my brain stops producing. But that was part of me believing that I was going to be stuck like that, or that there was no other way, because my brain was rewired. Years of using
Sure.
these substances changed the way I produce chemicals in my brain. And you touched on something that our book talks about. It says we won't recoil from alcohol like a hot flame. What that means is, like you said, I've gotten to a point in my recovery where I don't shun from, say, I need to go to a birthday party. I don't shun from alcohol because I understand where my life is with alcohol and drugs.
hmm
So it's not this. I'm a little different. I don't look at alcohol and marijuana as these evil beings.
hmm
For me, it was how I use them. And I have people in my family, I have guys at work that can go have a beer after work, that go home, take care of their kids, that don't get DUIs and crash cars and run from police. That wasn't me, So there's different strokes for different folks. We talk about trauma. What your trauma is that you can live through and say, okay, I'm good, that happened, I'm done, I'm moved on, might destroy someone else. So
Right. It's
what
so very personal. It's
exactly.
and
I
and
work
you
with
know
a guy. Oh,
that's the
sorry.
same thing with people's bottoms. We hear people like, "Well, why won't he stop?" It doesn't isn't this enough? And it is very clear to me that one guy has to go to prison for 9 years, and another guy just has to like scratch his car, and he's like, "Man, I'm done."
Mm-hmm.
And it's everybody's bottom is different. I have seen people, you know working in this environment with the people that I have that come and ask for help. I have seen people come and uh you know they have no more meat on them. They're just like a skeleton with skin, and they can't keep food down, and their body is shutting down, and you say, don't you see what's happening? And they continue to go on, and
Yeah.
everybody around says, why don't they see?
Yeah. I mean, I hit spots in my life where I hit what I thought was my bottom, and then the door opened and I fell further. You
Right.
know, the bottom is relative to, I equate it to my spirituality, my emotional state. I
Mm-hmm.
could be physically devastated, going to prison, kids gone, but I still had some being left. That's where my bottom was. I was spiritually and emotionally bankrupt. I still technically could have had my job. I still technically had a roof over my head, but I was emotionally done, devastated, destroyed. So that was my bottom. But there was times in
Right.
my life people looked at me and said, "You're not done. You're
Right.
facing
Right. Right.
you're
What?
facing seven. you're facing 7 to 10 years and you're going to court and you're getting high in the car before you go into court.
Right.
That's
Right.
not, but I still had something. I was still alive inside, if you will. When I was dead, when I physically, emotionally died, is when I was laying on my dad's floor. And for me, the drug stopped working. That buzzing sound, I would get
Yeah.
high and I would still have that buzzing, that nastiness. That's when I was like, that solution wasn't a solution anymore for me.
On page 52 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that describes the bedevilment, it says, we were a prey to misery. We could not control our emotional nature. We couldn't make a living. We could not be of real help to other people. That whole litany of things, that's my description of a bottom, because it has nothing to do with whether I have $1,000 or no dollars. It has nothing to do whether I'm married or not. It's about what's going on in my head, in my heart, and in my soul. And when you get to that bankruptcy, like you said, that you can give me more, it still does not get me where I need to be. You give me more love, I still don't feel loved. You give me more money, I'm still broke. You give me more anything, and it's not enough, because I'm just that far gone. That was when I was at the end, and those are the people I deal with. I have recovery coaches now, and we work with people that walk into police stations, hospitals, fire departments, etc., and throw their hands up and say, I quit. And I often ask my staff, how far does somebody have to be to arrest themselves, to
And
walk into a police station?
Yeah. And that feeling, to an outsider, you might look at, why are you smiling? When we see a guy come into a meeting like that, literally, could still be in his suit and tie, but he has that ghost look on his face. And he literally says, I don't know where to go. Like, you'll see guys, with a little bit of recovery, give that little smile. That's it. That's what the book talks about, the gift of desperation. That's
Right.
God's way of saying, okay, you're beat down enough. Or you'll get that guy that comes in and skips in with his little paper to sign, and unfortunately he's not right. Like, he hasn't been completely beat down yet, and that's the sad part, because some of us don't get beat down enough. We get put down. And that's what we're trying to get people to realize with a lot of these other events, and like what you're doing is getting this word out, is there might not be a second chance or a third chance. That today's day, the substances that are out there, you might not get another chance. So that's why we try to spread this message that you don't have to get completely beat down like I got, or like Tim got, or like Gerald got.
If they'll take your word for it.
Right. And
if they'll trust, right? If they'll say, it happened to Jason, it happened to Gerald, it'll probably happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was that
don't.
guy. I drew the line in the sand. I'm never going to steal from this person. Then I stole from that person. Well, I'll move it back. Well, I won't take it all. Then I move my line in the sand back a little farther. Well, I'll put it back. For a lot of us, like I was that kid where someone tell you the stove was hot. I reached up and touched it. And then 10 minutes later, let me just double check. Maybe I held my hand too long. Let me go quick.
Right.
A lot of us are like that. But that's why I think we continue, and when you get people like yourself and some other people I met in your program that continue to do what they do, you start to realize we're not getting financial gain. We're getting a spiritual calmality, a peace. At least I am, by carrying this message. Because hopefully that 30 years I spent, maybe the next guy only does 25. And then he could share it with somebody, and that guy does 20. And, so hopefully we could save some people. And I do believe we are. I do believe we have the ability to. And like you said, we don't hide. My kids, it's funny because we have Red Ribbon Week. I think you guys have. I think it's a national thing. Right before COVID, I did an event at my daughter's school. She's taking my cards to her principal. Have my dad come talk. This is a 13-year-old kid that's not afraid to admit that their dad was a substance abuser. She's
Right.
proud of where I'm at today. She goes to events. She sets up chairs. I think you saw her at the Hero Help. She gets her T-shirt on. It's amazing what us not being quiet can do to this next generation. They're seeing so
Right.
much of let's get on the music, let's party, dance, but where they're not seeing, which my kids could really educate people on, is those sleepless nights. Our lights are out. Daddy tackling the Christmas tree. No presents under the Christmas tree. Those are
Right.
things that you don't hear in the rap music or, like, and whatever this is now, with all these Instagrams and Snapchats that you don't
You're
hear.
right.
You see
You're
all the
right.
flashing lights and the parties and the girls, but you don't see the kids left at home or the jail
You
time
know,
that you get.
I'm not usually impacted by advertising or anything, but there was this one commercial that used to be on, and it was like this big giant yacht going real slow through the harbor in Miami, and everybody had on white clothes, and they're all like salsa dancing on the deck of the yacht, and then somebody gives them a beer, and then they all dance in the same. Everybody's doing the same step, and I just used to want to be on that boat so bad and be a part of that. But that's not where it would end for me, because all those people would go home
Mhm.
and I'm out creeping around in dirty white clothes in the middle of the night trying to find some cocaine
Yeah.
or whatever. It's just not me. And until I accepted that, you know, and that's what I have to be comfortable with, and say, that there will be times when I can't be a part of what is going on, but there will be other times when I can. Times like you said, like when your children are proud of you for what you're doing and what you're giving back, or when you can feel that pride. I had a young man come into the office today who we helped and thank us, and say that he was getting ready to walk away from treatment that we got him placed in, and one of my staff sent him a card saying, keep, hang in there, and it meant a lot to him. So
And and I'm sure you can relate. I remember how lost I was. So it's not, it's still fresh. 3 years is not yesterday, but it's not a lifetime. So
mhm.
I still remember that lost feeling. So I do feel when we carry this message, I go back to Gateway West and drop donuts off and have a cup of coffee. So people could see. I tell people all the time, I got sober. I didn't become a saint. I
Right,
still
right.
have character defects. But I could tell you, and I made a post today, I still have ups, downs, happiness, sadness. The problem is I feel them today. That
Hmm.
is what still, every day I wake up, I get on my knees. That's still probably one of my best blessings. I have feelings today. I'm still learning to deal with, but I have feelings today, and
Right
that's
on.
one of the biggest blessings that this program has given me.
Awesome. Well, hey man, we're coming up on 45 minutes, and that's kind of our time. So I want to thank you for taking your lunch break with us. I see you drinking your pop, and I know you're going to be starving tonight because you didn't get to have lunch. But I really appreciate it, and I know the people in our community appreciate all you've done. I think we're still going to work on trying to get you out here to help us get a Heroin Anonymous
Yeah, definitely,
group going.
definitely.
Um, that would be big. We've gotten a crystal meth anonymous going lately, with some help from some people in Chicago, and so we're really excited for that. So thank you for all you do, man.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Anytime. I really appreciate your support.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So enjoy the rest of your day. To everybody in the Sauk Valley, thank you for joining us, and keep watching Tuesday Talks. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right, thanks, bud.
All righty, man. Bye bye.